Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel in our Year of the Heart. This is going to be the first chapter discussion of Brené Brown's new book, Atlas of the Heart. And I just read it, and I have to say we didn't start with an easy one. And again, we're looking at the emotions, right, of that come out of things and experiences that we have, and what triggers these emotions. So the first chapter is called The Places We Go When Things Are Uncertain or Too Much. So what do you think, if you didn't even have this chapter to look at, what do you think are places that you would go for emotions? Probably like freaking out or worry or thinking the worst case scenario, right? So she's got a few emotions here: stress, overwhelm, anxiety, worry, avoidance, excitement, which sounds interesting, but she talks a bit about excitement being good or bad, dread, fear, and vulnerability, which we know is Brené's big research topic area. We have a kitty chiming in. That's Annabelle. So I hope you're reading along, because I don't know that I'll do all of the definitions justice, but she does describe some emotions in different ways than I would have thought about them. Like that list of emotions that I just said, when you think of stress, overwhelm, anxiety, worry, even just those, don't they all sort of seem like they would be the same? But she actually breaks down the difference between, like, one thing could be a situational feeling versus another thing could be just a personality trait, right? So let me see how to say this. This is a good chapter. It's an area that I can relate to because I tend to be sort of wired for stress, I think, and I'm just always hyper vigilant that something might go wrong. So that's where my stress a lot of times comes from. But I was going to say that after reading this, I was wanting more from the chapter. Like, basically this chapter is a definition of the various emotions, and maybe that's all we're going to get from each chapter, which is good. It's still like our journey of the heart here. But I guess I was wanting another step further of, like, once you go there, what does that mean? Or because, so here's an example. She talks about where, like, you might get stressed, okay? And I thought this was interesting that she said when you're stressed and overwhelmed, it's because of your perception of the fact that you may not be able to handle what's put in front of you. And okay, I get that, because I know, like, say I'm at my job and I feel like, you know, everything's coming at me, and then like one more unexpected thing happens, and it's mostly in my head, to the point of being, she mentions in this chapter too, like in the overwhelm area, that you can almost become paralyzed because you don't even know what step to take, because you've just gotten to the point which is like beyond the stress. It's like it's the like about to blow, about to implode. and I think that's interesting that it is all about the thoughts in your head, because we did just go through a book all about how the thoughts in our head can be changed, and if we look at them differently or we practice them differently, then we can affect things around us. So as I was reading this and thinking the fact that, so say I get stressed, then maybe a part of my quelling of that does have to do with, like, now I've learned this definition of, like, the reason that you're feeling this stress is because you have a fear that you're not going to be able to handle it all. And maybe that's true. maybe maybe there is some truth to that. That I know, I'm just again thinking about my job where like there's another part to this that I was thinking was going to be a part of the chapter, was that what does it mean if the worst case scenario comes true? Or what does it mean if we feel like we can't handle it? Like, where does that feeling come from? So that's what I was looking more, not just for these definitions of things, but more for how do you analyze it? Because if I think about the fact that, like, say at my job I feel overwhelmed, well, my biggest fear is, yes, that maybe I can't handle it, and but I'm also like the feelings that come up with stress in that situation are about maybe not being competent or feeling inadequate, in another way to say that, or feeling like I can't maintain composure or keep like a steady, pleasant, complimenting mood with people and my coworkers. So I felt like, and again, this is the first chapter, so maybe as we go, we're going to be learning more and more through this book. But I felt like I wanted a little bit more, because stress and anxiety, they are things that are part of my life. So I'm glad I understand some of them a little bit more, but then I wanted to think and act more maybe with them. So anyway, that's just my own opinion of what I'm doing here. So as far as stress goes, I think we probably all know what stress is, right? We feel stressed when we evaluate environmental demand as beyond our ability to cope successfully. This includes elements of unpredictability, uncontrollability, and feeling overloaded. So yeah, if you are a control freak, and we talked a lot about this during our Simple Abundance here, then you are going to freak out when you can't control things. And isn't that the case in life? I mean, we don't have a lot of control about some things. So the difference between, she gave an example of when she used to work at a restaurant. The difference between stressed and overwhelmed is that when you're stressed, you can still think, and you can still, like, someone might say, what can I do to help you? And you could still say, I need X, Y, and Z. Or like you might know the solution, like, I'm gonna need to stay till 11 o'clock tonight. If I'm thinking again about jobs, or I need 3 other people to be helping me with this or something. And then, but when you're overwhelmed, she calls it, in the restaurant terms, they would say, like, if they got to a point and they said, like, I'm blown, it was just that they couldn't even remember which tables they were waiting on, and it was like somebody had to just come in and remove the person from the situation to, like, go and, like, so the waitress could go and cry or scream, or just have like 10 minutes to kind of like clear their head and get back into it. So stressed is like a part of the process, and it's like, if you think about a scale, it's on the way to overwhelmed, but they're different. I always thought of sort of like stressed and overwhelmed as one and the same. Overwhelmed means it's an extreme level of stress or emotional and or cognitive intensity to the point of feeling unable to function. So that makes sense when you think about the word overwhelm. Now, anxiety, this is where she talks a little bit about the fact that some people might be just sort of like an anxious personality. And if you grew up in a house where there was fear, maybe you had screaming in the background, or you had severe discipline, or you might have had to move a million times because your parents were unemployed, or parents got divorced all of a sudden, there was just like circumstances that shocked you, or that you had some trauma in, you might be just wired for anxiety. And she does talk a bit about anxiety. Again, it's about not being able to control things and your mind running away with the worst case scenario. But she does say that, it can be scary and confusing. Where's the part where it says, she's talking about a scene from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and on the boat, when it's the original version, there was a scary part, and she just says, like, anxiety is like, let me off the boat, When we say that anxiety can be both a state and a trait, so if somebody's just anxious, it's a situational thing versus a trait that's sort of like wired into their body. It means that some of us feel anxious mainly in response to certain situations, while some of us can be naturally more predisposed to anxiety than others. So I would put myself in that second group. And of course, you've heard of people having anxiety disorder, maybe needing anxiety medication, and she actually gives some statistics here that 1/3 of U.S. adults are affected by anxiety disorder in their lifetime. And sometimes it can be something that passes, and other times it can be something that just is going to just constantly need to be addressed with medication. And so worrying is not the same, again, as anxiety. They go together, but worry, it's not an emotion, it's the thinking part of the anxiety. Worry is described as a chain of negative thoughts about bad things that might happen in the future. So there it is, it's your brain and the thoughts running away with you. It's not even the emotion, it's the thoughts that are, well, what do you think about it? Do you think that it's like the thoughts cause the emotions, or the emotions cause the thoughts? Could be either way. All right, what about avoidance? Some people, that's their coping mechanism. Things are just too much, and they just say, sorry, I'm sick today. They don't show up. Or they don't go to a meeting, or they don't bring up a topic that needs to be discussed, or they don't say they're sorry when there's an apology needed. It can hurt people, it can hurt you, but some people, that's just their go-to. Maybe because the anxiety is so bad that they're just like, nope, not gonna do it, not gonna be there, get me off the boat. Now, what about excitement? Don't you think of exciting as something positive? Like, I'm so excited for this trip, or something positive. But anxiety and excitement feel the same way in the body, Brené tells us, which is pretty interesting. I'd have to really think about that. Maybe the next time I get excited, I will think if I feel the same way. I know if I have anxiety, or if I'm just on the edge of overwhelm, then I will have that fight or flight response in my body. And I don't feel that way when I'm excited. I suppose it's like if you think about your heart beats faster, and there would be some crossover. But if I have the choice, I would want to feel excited versus anxious. Even though excitement is described as an energized state of enthusiasm leading up to or during an enjoyable activity, it doesn't always feel great. That's true. You could be nervous and excited for, like, you're about to do a performance or something, and you're excited, but there's like those nerves that would be sort of on the edge of anxious. Now, what about dread? Maybe you hate public speaking. So, like in that situation, you're having this dream of like forgetting everything that you're supposed to say, or you're up there and you're naked and everybody can see you. And, you know, it's like those horrible dreams that you have where, again, it's your mind making it way worse than it actually probably would be, right? And Brené says something that's pretty interesting. She says, I can convince myself that an experience is going to be so disastrous that she can work herself into a dread frenzy. And it's terrible because even if the situation ends up going really well, her dread is so bad. She says she's dread exhausted and she can't even enjoy the experience. I could see that. You know, there's people that like get really into their weddings and they're so excited, but then they're worried it's gonna rain, or you know, like every little detail. And then the whole time, even if the day goes well, they're just this bottle of nerves and they don't even enjoy it. What about fear? I mean, that's in this same sort of area, right, of anxiety and things like that. So fear is a negative, short-lasting, high alert emotion in response to a perceived threat. And like anxiety, it can be measured as a state or a trait. So again, it's a short-term thing. I suppose you could have fear wired into your personality as well. If you had to survive in the woods or something for your whole early life and that was what you grew up like, you probably would be hard-pressed to not have that fear response to a lot of things. Fear arises when we need to respond quickly to physical and psychological danger, and that is present and imminent. So it's like an in-the-moment feeling. And then she closes this chapter with her specialty, which is vulnerability. And she gives us some examples of moments in your life that you might remember as being vulnerable. And what do you think of when you think of vulnerability? Do you think of being sort of exposed? Like, is it a negative thing? Or everybody knowing your secrets? She has some good examples here of things like talking about your feelings, watching your child leave for college, apologizing to a colleague about how you spoke to them at a meeting, waiting for the doctor to call. So, well, some of these I could think of that there would be fear, anxiety, and other things wrapped up in it. So I could see why vulnerability would be in this chapter, because vulnerability takes courage, right? And it doesn't have to be shared with everybody. It can be saved for those moments that the people and circumstances are deserving of. And she mentions courage here. In my most recent research on courage and leadership, the ability to embrace vulnerability emerged as a prerequisite for all of the daring leadership behaviors that they were studying. If we can't handle uncertainty, risk, and emotional pressure in a way that aligns with our values and furthers our organizational goals, then we can't lead. So vulnerability has that element of uncertainty in it as well. That's true, because you could share something very deep and personal, and you do risk the ridicule or reaction of somebody. We talked about that a lot last year when we were reading her Gifts of Imperfection book. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's our greatest measure of courage. And that's the end of this book, this chapter. And this whole page right here says that. So it's not about being weak. If you think about the fact that maybe you were brought up to have a stiff upper lip and just hold it together and don't cry and don't show your emotions, you know, to be strong. But that doesn't, being vulnerable is not weakness. It means that you actually had more courage to be able to bring that part of yourself forward. So, in summary, the places that we go when things are uncertain or too much, there's a lot wrapped up in that. And I'm surprised we started, like I said, with one that I thought maybe we'd start with like a happy one. This one I guess it's a good one to start with because it's probably one that everybody can relate to, at least at some point in their lives. Certainly something that I have had as a part of my life. One thing I want to say too is that I picked up this other book too, and it's not by Brené Brown, but it's called Journey to the Heart. And I wanted to have something to read on a daily basis, like a daily affirmation or a daily thought, like Simple Abundance was more of a longer chapter. But I'm really enjoying this. It's called Daily Meditations Daily Meditations on the Path of Freeing Your Soul by Melanie Beattie, I guess is how you would say her name. And I found this book because as I was deciding what to call the channel, I thought about maybe calling it Journey to the Heart because we are on this map, this atlas of the heart, and I wanted to make sure that I wasn't, choosing something that was already copyrighted. So I happened upon this book and I was looking at it, and it's written by somebody who deals with codependency and recovery from addictions and things, and I guess a lot of that resonates with me as well. So I'm enjoying it, and here's an example of the size of a day. So it's not even always a whole page, and it gives you a thought, and sometimes there's affirmations at the end of it too. So I just wanted to give a little plug for that. It's been a nice, actually it matches too. It's been a nice little supplement to the heart journey that we're on this year. Hope that your January has gone well. I hope you're thinking about some ways to make February even more heart-centered. Of course, that's our month of love, right? Always with Valentine's Day, and thinking about the heart. I think it's American Heart Association month or something like that too. So I hope you're doing well. I will be back with you again for more of Brené Brown's book and maybe a little sprinkling in of some other thoughts as they come up. And I'm sending my love to you all. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.